You are pregnant and fleeing conflict from your home in Nasarawa State, north-central Nigeria. You travel many hours on foot, your body aching with exhaustion. And just before you reach the town you're headed to for safety, you go into labor. The conflict in Maraba Udege reportedly started in April 2024 over land disputes between two clans. What began as verbal exchanges escalated, and in December, one clan launched a violent attack. In January 2025, the other clan retaliated, worsening the situation and forcing many people to flee. Welcome to Vestiges of Violence. Here, we talk about survivors. For Human Angle, I am Sabika. Jummai Gabriel was brushing her teeth early one morning when she heard the sound of gunfire. It was 6 a.m. and she was 9 months pregnant, expecting her first child any day. But as the gunshots grew louder and closer, she had no choice but to run. Jummai and her family fled their home in Ebe and headed to Oshini, both small towns in Nasarawa State, north-central Nigeria. At the entrance of the town they have now been displaced to, Jummai went into labor. There was a primary school close by, and there she gave birth to her baby girl. Sadly, the baby did not survive. Jummai and her family continued their journey into Oshini, where she is now trying to heal the body that carried the child she could only hold in her arms for a short time. She has been sick since the displacement, and her husband, who lost nearly everything in the attack, cannot afford medical care. So, she relies on hot water and herbal remedies from her mother for some relief. This is not the first time Jummai has been displaced. She fled her home once following an attack in December 2024. She later returned home only to be forced to flee again 3 weeks later. 2 of her siblings went missing during the chaos. It has been over a month now. There are rumors they have been killed, but her family remains hopeful and continues to search for them. Jummai yearns for peace. She hopes the government will help her family find her siblings and rebuild what they have lost. Above all, she longs for food, safety, and the chance to return home. Similarly, Christiana and her family were displaced in this conflict during the attack in December. The men stayed behind in Ebe to protect what remained of their home. But Christiana, pregnant and carrying one of her 4 children on her back, had to escape in the dead of the night. That evening, she was with her family when they heard gunshots and learned that their king had been killed. By 11 p.m., they were fleeing for their lives, and it wasn't until 2 a.m. that they finally reached safety.
I'm pregnant, and I've never had to do something so difficult while pregnant. I don't even know how I got the strength to walk that far while holding my child.
The attackers had broken into their new house, a home they were just about to move into, and burned it to the ground. They now live in a cold, cramped space that was originally built as a shop. They brought nothing with them from Ebe. Everything they use here in Oshini is borrowed. Christiana has been ill since arriving, battling a fever and an infection. Back home, she had access to antenatal care. But for over a month now, she hasn't been able to see a doctor. Her husband, who works for a road construction company, visits when he can, but he has little to offer after losing everything in the conflict. Their phones, furniture, farm produce, everything they owned were destroyed in the fire. Her children no longer go to school, and even though Christiana used to have a thriving juice business, her small attempts to start over here have failed.
I used to sell pap in the market and did very well. But here, even if I make it, no one buys. Not as little as 500 naira worth of it sells.
What Christiana wants is simple: food for her family, medicine for her sickness, and peace. She dreams of returning to her village, rebuilding her life, and welcoming her new baby into a world that is kind and safe. This episode was reported by Al-Amin Umar, scripted and presented by Sabiq Abello. Multimedia editor is Anthony Asamota, and executive producer is Ahmed Salkida. In order to protect the identities of survivors, we use voice actors for this episode. If you or anyone you know have a story to share on vestiges of violence, do not hesitate to get in touch with us.